Have you ever wondered which generation of Pokemon has the highest attack, or lowest speed, or which Pokemon has the most average base stats? Probably not, but I have. And I've done the maths and figured out the average base stats of every Pokemon sorted by generation. This video is going to tell you a bunch of random facts you didn't know you wanted to know about Pokemon stats. I'm going to quickly break down a list of Pokemon that I decided to exclude from the data, as well as a couple of notes on how I handled things like different forms and stats changing between generations. If you don't care about that, skip to the timestamp on the screen. I know this is going to be controversial, but the first group I've decided to exclude is legendary Pokemon, as well as mythicals, ultra beasts, and paradox Pokemon, since for the purpose of this video they're all essentially legendaries. To keep things concise, I'll be using the word legendary to talk about all four of these groups together. Legendary Pokemon have much higher stats than regular Pokemon, so I've excluded them to stop the data being skewed by generations introducing more or less legendaries. For example, Gen 1 introduced 5 legendaries which make up 3% of the Pokedex, but Gen 7 introduced 27 legendaries which make up 31% of the Pokedex. This would give Gen 7 an unfair advantage through much higher averages and wouldn't be a good representation of Gen 7 Pokemon as a whole. If I included legendary Pokemon, this video wouldn't show which generation has the highest stats, but instead which generation introduced the most legendaries, which in my opinion makes for a much less interesting video. Next, I didn't include any alternate forms of Pokemon that were released in a different generation to the base Pokemon. Greninja is a Generation 6 Pokemon, but Ash Greninja wasn't released until Generation 7, so Ash Greninja is excluded from the data. It doesn't belong in the Gen 6 category since it's not available in any Gen 6 game, but it also doesn't belong in the Gen 7 category since it's not a Gen 7 Pokemon. The forms that I've excluded include Ash Greninja, all Mega Pokemon, Eternal Floette, Blood Moon Ursaluna, and Partner Pikachu and Eevee from the Let's Go games. The third group I've excluded are regional variants, but if a regional variant evolves into a brand new Pokemon, the evolution is included. So, for example, Farfetch'd is included in Gen 1, Sirfetch'd is included in Gen 8, and Galarian Farfetch'd is not included anywhere. The fourth group I'm not including are any alternate forms of Pokemon that are completely unobtainable to the player. The only non-legendary Pokemon in this group is Rivervroom's Starmobile forms, since they only exist as a boss battle and you can never use them on your team. Next, I want to look at alternate forms that I have included. If a Pokemon has multiple forms which have different stats, their stats are averaged. For example, male Oinkologne has 100 attack, and female Oinkologne has 90 attack, so I used the average attack stat of 95. Pause the video if you want to read a full list of Pokemon whose stats I had to average. The only special case here is Rotom. Base Rotom has these stats, and the 5 different forms of Rotom have these stats. The appliance forms all have the exact same base stats, so Rotom has 6 forms but only 2 sets of stats. When I calculated Rotom's averages, I counted all 6 forms separately. This is because they all have different types and communities like Smogon rank them separately, so they're a lot more distinct than the different colours of Minior for example, which is just a visual change. Something that I had to consider was that some Pokemon stats change between generations. For example, Pidgeot has 91 speed from Generation 1 to 5, and then 101 speed from Generation 6 onwards. I decided to use the stats a Pokemon had when it was first introduced, so we can see how strong each generation was when it was released. Finally, when I figured out the averages, I rounded everything to a whole number to make the data easier to look at. With all of that out of the way, let's get into the numbers. The first metric I want to look at is base stat totals, or BSTs. In last place, the weakest generation is Gen 3, with an average BST of 384. 8th place is Gen 2, with an average of 392. 7th place is Gen 1 with 399. 6th place is Gen 5 with 408. 5th and 4th place is a tie between Gen 6 and 7 with an average of 411. 3rd place is Gen 9 with 415. 2nd place is Gen 8 with 419. And 1st place is Gen 4 with an average of 420. Power creep is the idea that with every generation, the average Pokemon becomes stronger and stronger, and looking at the data, we can pretty obviously see that that's true. Generation 1 to 3's BSTs are all below 400, and Generation 5 to 9 are all around 410 or above. The only significant outlier here is Gen 4, which is a massive 36 points higher than the previous generation, and around 10 points higher than Generation 5, 6 and 7, which seems to disrupt the power creep idea, but once you look into the Gen 4 Pokemon, you can see what causes this massive spike. Generation 4 introduced 22 new evolutions to older Pokemon, which is way more than any other generation. These new evolutions, like Magmortar, Gliscor and Togekiss, all have pretty high stats. All 22 of them have a BST over 500, apart from Froslass, Ambipom and Mismagius. There are 93 non-legendary Pokemon in Gen 4, so these new evolutions make up 24% of my calculation. Almost a quarter of the Gen 4 Pokemon are fully evolved and have weaker evolutions in past generations. This massively pushes the average up for Gen 4 and explains the big jump from Generation 1, 2 and 3. If we were to exclude those 22 Pokemon and only look at the remaining 71 Generation 4 Pokemon, the average would be brought down from 420 to 393, which would take Gen 4 from 1st place down to 8th. This shows us that Gen 5 is when power creep really started going, and the average Pokemon becomes a lot stronger than ones from past generations. There's a smaller but still noticeable spike in Gen 8, which is the generation that introduced the second highest amount of new evolutions to older Pokemon. There's 12 altogether, and they make up 14% of the non-legendary Pokedex. Without those 12 new evolutions, Gen 8 would have an average of 404, so there is a slight dip from Gen 7, but it's still well above Generation 1, 2 and 3. The final point I want to make on BSTs is why Gen 3 is so low. Looking at Gen 3 Pokemon stats, you can see that a lot of them fall into the same trap. Low BST mixed attackers with bad speed and bulk. Gen 3 obviously does have some good Pokemon like Flygon and Gardevoir, but for every fully evolved Pokemon with a BST over 500, there's around 6 fully evolved Pokemon with a BST under 500. Unfortunately, with Gen 3, it seems like Nintendo wanted to make the majority of Pokemon just a little bit too bad. As I said before, there's a 36-point difference between the highest and lowest generations, Gen 4 and 3. It's interesting to think how different a lot of Gen 3 Pokemon would be with an additional 36 points added to their stats. Bayonet with 101 speed would be an amazing mixed sweeper, Aggron with 96 special defense would patch up its deathly weakness to special attacks, and Altaria with 106 attack would be incredible alongside Dragon Dance. Next, I want to look at the averages per stat and per generation. The generation with the highest average HP is Gen 9 with 71, the highest attack is Gen 8 with 79, the highest defense is Gen 7 with 73, the highest special attack is a tie between Gen 6 and 8 with 69, the highest special defense is Gen 7 with 72, and the highest speed is Gen 1 with 68. I'm not too surprised by this. We know that with power creep, newer generations are stronger than older ones. The only surprising thing here is Generation 1 being the fastest. In the earlier generations, base 100 speed was considered pretty high in competitive Pokemon. By Gen 5, base 100 speed was okay, and in Gen 9 competitive, base 100 speed is nothing special, so it's really surprising to find out that Generation 1 Pokemon are the fastest. This seems to be because a lot of the crazy high speed stats of newer generations belong to legendary Pokemon. If I included legendaries in my calculations, Gen 1's average speed would go from 68 to 69, but Gen 9's average speed would jump from 67 all the way up to 76. So Gen 1 Pokemon are fast compared to regular Gen 9 Pokemon, but slow compared to Gen 9 legendaries. Now looking at the lowest stats by generation, the generation with the lowest HP is Gen 1 with 63, the lowest attack is Gen 2 with 66, the lowest defense is Gen 3 with 65, the lowest special attack is Gen 2 with 62, the lowest special defense is Gen 3 with 62, and the lowest speed is Gen 7 with 58. Once again, this isn't too surprising. Most of the lowest rankings belong to Gen 1, 2 and 3. The one that I want to focus on is Gen 7 being the slowest. Not including legendaries, the only Gen 7 Pokemon with a speed stat over 100 are Salazzle, Ribombee and 2 forms of Lycanroc. Only having 3 regular Pokemon with a speed stat over 100 seems to explain why Gen 7 ranks lowest for speed. Something interesting that I noticed is that a lot of Gen 7 Pokemon actually get slower as they evolve. Incineroar, Toucannon, Vikavolt, Crabominable, Toxapex, Mudsdale and Golisopod all have a speed stat that's 10 to 30 points lower than their pre-evolved forms. This isn't unheard of in other generations. For example, Wingull and Electabuzz both lose speed as they evolve, but for it to be so common in Gen 7 it makes me think Nintendo definitely had some kind of ulterior motive to slow down Gen 7 Pokemon. It could maybe be Nintendo's way of trying to stop power creep, at least for the speed stat, or another theory is that Alolan Pokemon are so slow because they're from a tropical, relaxed and laid-back environment. Next, I want to look at the highest and lowest stats of each generation. 7 out of 9 generations have speed as their lowest, being every generation from 2 to 8. The only exceptions are Gen 1's lowest being HP, and Gen 9's lowest being special defense. Now looking at the highest stats, 7 out of 9 generations have attack as their highest, being Gen 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 and 9. That just leaves us with Gen 2 whose highest stat is special defense, and Gen 6 whose highest is physical defense. My theory on why speed is almost always the lowest is that fully evolved Pokemon will commonly have low speed stats, like Sudowoodo and Gigalith who have 30 and 25, but it's quite rare for any other stat to be that low on a fully evolved Pokemon. Gen 2 having special defense as its highest actually makes sense. A lot of Gen 2 Pokemon randomly have massive special defense stats. Togetic has base 105, Ledian, Slowking, and Hitmontop have 110, Umbreon has 130, Blissey has 135, Mantine has 140, and Shuckle has 230. If we excluded Shuckle, the Gen 2 average would drop from 69 to 67, which is really impressive for a single Pokemon. Gen 6's highest being physical defense also makes sense, considering there's only 66 non-legendary Pokemon, so a couple of really high stats can make a big difference, and bring the average up quite significantly. For example, Doublade, Aegislash, and Carbink all have 150 defense, and Avalugg has 184. If you want to take a look at each generation's average stats, and not just the highest and lowest, pause the video and take a look at the table on screen. Now, I want to look at the average stats of every Pokemon across all 9 generations, so we can figure out which Pokemon is the most average overall. The average HP stat is 67, the average attack is 74, average defense is 69, average special attack is 66, average special defense is 67, and average speed is 63. That makes the average BST 407. We can see that the average Pokemon has much more physical attack than special, has pretty even defenses, and is on the slower side. The Pokemon with the most similar stats that I could find were Croconaw, Pupitar, and Marshtomp, and I struggled to decide which of these 3 is closest to the average. Pupitar and Marshtomp are a bit too slow, with too much attack, and Croconaw has a bit too much defense. As a tiebreaker, I decided to look at the biggest difference in a single stat between each Pokemon and the average. The biggest difference for Pupitar was speed, which is 12 points lower than the average. The biggest difference for Marshtomp was also speed, which is 13 points lower than the average. And the biggest difference for Croconaw was defense, which is 11 points higher than the average. Therefore, Croconaw's our winner, and is, at least using my definition, the most average Pokemon overall. Something interesting that I noticed when looking for which Pokemon was closest to the average is that every Pokemon I considered was from an older generation. Pupitar and Croconaw are from Gen 2, and Marshtomp is from Gen 3. The only other Pokemon that I thought was somewhat close was Combuskin, who's also from Gen 3. I think this goes to show that older Pokemon are, in general, a lot more well-rounded, while newer Pokemon are a lot more specialised and have some stats much higher or lower than others. For example, if we look at the starter Pokemon from Generation 1 and 2, their highest and lowest stats are 109 and 78, with a difference of 31. But looking at the starters from Generation 8 and 9, their highest and lowest stats are 125 and 60, with a difference of 65. Pokemon from newer generations seem to have much higher highs and lower lows with their stats, and they seem to be a lot less likely to be an all-rounder, with all 6 stats being around the same. I want to end on a couple of random points that I noticed. First of all, Gen 1's average special attack and special defense are both 65, which is pretty interesting considering they used to be the same stat in Gen 1. Pokemon used to have a special stat which acted as both your special attack and special defense. Then in Gen 2, that stat got split into the 2 special stats we have today. Some Pokemon like Gyarados ended up losing 40 points of special attack, while some like Snorlax gained 45 points of special defense. It seems like when they were deciding how to break up the special stat, they kept it really well balanced between attack and defense. Next, in every single generation, special attack is lower than physical attack. Special attackers are usually better than physical attackers, since their moves rarely make contact and generally have higher power and accuracy. For example, Zen Headbutt is an 80 base power physical contact move with 90% accuracy, and Psychic is a 90 base power special non-contact move with 100% accuracy. Maybe giving Pokemon higher average physical attack is Nintendo's way of trying to make up for physical attacks generally being worse than special ones. The highest average stat here is Gen 8's physical attack, with an average of 79. 56% of non-legendary Generation 8 Pokemon have higher physical attack than special, 32% have higher special attack than physical, and 12% have even attacking stats. What's interesting about Generation 8 is that a lot of their special attackers also have decent physical attack. Looking at the 27 Pokemon with higher special attack, a lot of them, like Inteleon, Appleton, Toxtricity, Hatterene, Cursula, Mr. Rime, and Duraludon, all have physical attack stats of 80 or above. Generation 8 has high stats in general thanks to power creep, has a majority of physical attackers, and has a lot of special attackers who can also hit hard on the physical side. This seems to be what makes Generation 8's attack the highest stat across all generations. The lowest overall stat is Generation 7 Speed, which I've already discussed, but just 1 point higher than that is Generation 2 and 3 Speed. These 2 generations only introduced 4 Pokemon each with a speed stat above 100. They also introduced a combined total of 113 fully evolved Pokemon with a speed stat of 100 or below. That means only 7% of fully evolved Pokemon from Gen 2 and 3 have over 100 speed. Another way to look at this is that for every fully evolved Pokemon from Gen 2 and 3 with over 100 speed, there's 14 fully evolved Pokemon with 100 speed or below. Comparing that to Generation 6, which ranked in the middle with the 4th highest speed stat, there's 10 fully evolved Pokemon with over 100 speed. There's only 32 fully evolved Gen 6 Pokemon, so those 10 make up 31% of fully evolved Kalos Pokemon. Or, there's approximately 1 Generation 6 Pokemon with over 100 speed for every 2 fully evolved Gen 6 Pokemon with 100 speed or below. So it's safe to say that Generation 2 and 3 introduced a massive amount of slow Pokemon compared to other generations. So that's the video. Random statistics about Pokemon stats. This is my first time making a video like this, so if you enjoyed it and you want to see more videos about Pokemon statistics, leave a comment to let me know, and like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for watching, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.